From Morgan's burning campaigns to Lowe's calculated cruelty, these pirates proved that terror could be as powerful as cannon fire. Their ships eventually vanished, their crews scattered, and many of their captains died violently, yet the destruction they left behind survived in history. The Golden Age of Piracy was never simply an era of treasure and adventure. It was an age when shattered ships, ruined settlements, and relentless violence turned the Atlantic into a battlefield.
Enjoy the video, and don't forget to subscribe.
Trace your finger along the map from the Bahamas across the Windward Passage toward Jamaica and picture the year 1718, when the smell of rotting oak, boiling pine tar, damp hemp rigging, human sweat, stale bilge water, and burned black powder drifted across an Atlantic increasingly ruled by men whose reputations depended upon calculated terror. Number 5 among the bloodiest pirates of the Golden Age begins with Edward Lowe, whose career erupted after 1721 and became notorious even by the brutal standards of Atlantic piracy. Lowe commanded captured sloops and larger vessels strengthened by white oak futtocks, their curved frames joined beneath pronounced tumble-home by hand-forged iron spikes often 10 to 12 inches long. Seams between hull planks were packed with twisted oakum and sealed with heated pitch, while periodic careening removed barnacles that could reduce speed during pursuit. His crews operated under articles of agreement regulating shares, discipline, weapons, and compensation, yet prisoners received no comparable protection. Merchant crews feared Lowe because surrender did not necessarily guarantee survival. His cannon transformed that fear into physical destruction. Typical bronze pieces were cast primarily from roughly 88% copper and 10% tin, their bores loaded with coarse black powder composed near the traditional ratio of 75% saltpeter, 15% charcoal, and 10% sulfur. When a glowing match ignited the priming charge, expanding gases accelerated iron shot through the barrel before recoil slammed the carriage backward against thick, breaching ropes. At close range, a ball-penetrating oak planking did more than leave a circular hole. Compressed timber fibers exploded inward as razor-edged splinters capable of crossing an entire deck, turning the wooden architecture protecting sailors into the weapon that killed them. Number 4 takes us backward to 1717 and the waters surrounding the Bahamas, where Benjamin Hornigold helped create the pirate concentration from which some of the era's most infamous captains emerged. But the darker position belongs to Charles Vane, a commander whose violence and refusal to accept authority made even fellow pirates distrust him. Vane operated fast sloops, generally displacing roughly 70 to 100 tons. Vessels whose shallow draft allowed them to disappear through reefs where heavier naval ships risked tearing open their hulls. Their standing rigging descended through tarred hemp shrouds into deadies secured by chain plates, while mast partners transferred the enormous pressure of canvas into the deck structure. In July 1718, when Governor Woodes Rogers arrived at Nassau carrying royal pardons intended to destroy the pirate republic, Vane rejected submission. He converted a captured vessel into a fireship, loading combustible material aboard before setting it ablaze and sending the burning hull toward Rogers's squadron while escaping into darkness. The technique exploited one of every wooden captain's greatest fears, uncontrolled fire. Pine tar coating, rigging, and seams could ignite rapidly, while dry canvas, oak splinters, powder cartridges, and exposed hemp transformed individual flames into a spreading catastrophe. Vane subsequently attacked merchant shipping across the Caribbean and North American coast, using intimidation, beatings, and threats to force prisoners to reveal valuables. His quartermasters distributed captured wealth according to articles of agreement, but discipline depended upon loaded pistols, cutlasses, boarding axes, and the possibility of immediate violence. Yet Vane's greatest weakness was the same pirate democracy that empowered him. In November 1718, he refused to engage a vessel he believed to be a French warship. His crew called him a coward, invoked their voting rights, removed him as captain, and elected Calico Jack Rackham in his place. Number 3 emerges from the Carolina coast in 1718 beneath a name deliberately engineered to terrify sailors before the first boarding hook touched their rail. Edward Teach, better known as Blackbeard. His flagship, Queen Anne's Revenge, was the former French slave ship La Concorde, captured in November 1717 and converted into a pirate warship carrying approximately 40 guns. Her hull displaced several hundred tons, with massive oak futtocks supporting thick external planking, internal ceiling timbers, lodging knees, deck beams, and mast partners capable of absorbing the tremendous stresses imposed by square canvas and artillery recoil. Teach understood that psychological violence could save powder and men. Contemporary accounts described his enormous beard and slow-burning matches positioned around his hat during battle, surrounding his face with sulfurous smoke and making resistance appear suicidal. In May 1718, his flotilla blockaded Charlestown, South Carolina, capturing vessels and prisoners while demanding medicine. Yet his most famous violence came during his final battle at Ocracoke on November 22, 1718. Lieutenant Robert Maynard approached with 2 lightly armed sloops whose crews concealed themselves below deck after Teach's broadside swept their exposed timbers. Black powder flashed through touch holes, producing expanding gases that drove round shot and grape shot outward, while recoil hurled gun carriages against breaching ropes. When Teach boarded, Maynard's hidden sailors erupted onto the deck. Pistols discharged at several feet, cutlasses struck through wool coats and leather belts, and muskets filled the confined vessel with smoke. According to the account later popularized by Captain Charles Johnson, Blackbeard finally fell after receiving approximately 5 gunshot wounds and around 20 sword cuts. His severed head was then suspended from Maynard's bowsprit, transforming the pirate who had weaponized terror into a warning displayed above the same Atlantic waters he had once dominated. Number 2 appears off West Africa in 1721 beneath the black flags of Bartholomew Roberts, called Black Bart, whose extraordinary record of hundreds of captured vessels made his organization one of the most destructive pirate operations of the Golden Age. Roberts understood piracy not as isolated robbery, but as a disciplined maritime system. His articles of agreement regulated voting, gambling, weapons, readiness, compensation for wounds, and distribution of plunder, while his crews shifted between captured vessels whenever a faster or more heavily armed hull became available. His flagship Royal Fortune eventually carried approximately 40 cannon and could challenge targets that ordinary pirate sloops avoided. Each gun demanded a coordinated crew working with worm, sponge, rammer, cartridge, wad, shot, priming powder, and slow match. A typical powder mixture contained roughly 75% potassium nitrate, 15% charcoal, and 10% sulfur. Ignition converted solid ingredients into rapidly expanding hot gases that forced iron projectiles down the bore, while bronze barrels, commonly produced from copper-rich alloys containing roughly 10% tin, absorbed tremendous pressure. Roberts used such firepower during raids from Newfoundland to Brazil, the Caribbean, and the African coast. In 1721, his fleet seized numerous vessels around the Guinea trade, creating panic across shipping routes measured in thousands of nautical miles. His reputation became especially grim after the capture of the slave ship Porcupine, whose captain reportedly refused Roberts's ransom demand. Contemporary pirate history accused Roberts's men of burning the vessel while enslaved people remained aboard, although surviving accounts require cautious interpretation. What is certain is that his campaign systematically destroyed commercial security. On February 10, 1722, HMS Swallow found Royal Fortune near Cape Lopez. A broadside tore through Roberts's vessel, and grape shot struck the pirate captain in the throat. His crew immediately wrapped his body according to his wishes and dropped it into the sea before the Royal Navy could display it. Number 1 belongs not to the pirate who captured the greatest number of ships, but to the buccaneer whose campaigns demonstrated how piracy could escalate into organized warfare, Henry Morgan. Decades before Blackbeard haunted the Carolinas, Morgan commanded expeditions involving hundreds of armed men under commissions and letters of marque issued within the violent imperial struggle between England and Spain. His 1668 attack on Portobello revealed the scale of his methods. Rather than merely intercepting merchantmen, Morgan attacked fortified settlements defended by stone walls, artillery platforms, musketeers, and cannon whose iron shot could smash through advancing formations. His greatest campaign began in 1670, when a force numbering more than 1,000 men assembled for the assault that culminated at Panama in January 1671. Their ships depended upon oak keels, interlocking futtocks, tarred standing, rigging, hemp-running lines, capstans, deadies, chain plates, and repeated careening. Yet Morgan ultimately forced his men inland through tropical terrain where naval technology offered little protection. Hunger became another weapon. Buccaneers marched through mud, rivers, insects, heat, and depleted settlements before encountering Spanish forces outside Panama on January 28th. Muskets using lead balls and black powder charges produced dense smoke as disciplined volleys collided with Spanish cavalry and infantry. After the defenders broke, Panama descended into catastrophe. Fire consumed much of the city, although responsibility for starting it remains disputed among contemporary accounts. Warehouses, houses, religious buildings, and stores disappeared beneath smoke while victors searched for silver, gold, jewels, and concealed valuables. Prisoners were interrogated and subjected to brutal coercion described in period narratives. Morgan returned toward the Caribbean with enormous plunder and captives, leaving behind a ruined imperial center and proving that the boundaries separating privateering, piracy, and state-sponsored warfare could become almost impossible to distinguish. From Morgan's burning campaigns to Roberts, Blackbeard, Vane, and Lowe, the Golden Age was built on cannon smoke, shattered hulls, terror, and violence that turned entire oceans into hunting grounds.